You ever walked into a room and felt it? That shift in energy when someone subtly dismisses you? Maybe they don't say it out loud, but their tone, their eyes, their body language, all of it screams you don't matter. It's a glance that lingers just a second too long. A snide comment disguised as a joke. Or maybe it's that coworker who interrupts you every time you speak, the family member who belittles your choices, or the friend who never claps when you win. Now, here's the truth. Disrespect doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. And if you don't catch it early, it becomes the background noise of your life. Well, what if you didn't just take it? What if instead of shrinking, you stood tall? What if you learned to respond without rage, without chaos, but with so much inner strength that it disarms them? Because let's get something straight. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. That's not your job. Your job is to know it so deeply that disrespect rolls off you like rain on armor. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about becoming cold or cruel. This is about becoming untouchable. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And today I'm going to walk you through 5 powerful ways to handle people who don't respect you without losing your dignity, your energy, or your peace. By the time we're done, you won't just know how to handle them. You'll know how to outgrow them. Let's begin. When people treat you poorly, when they minimize your value, ignore your voice, or undermine your presence, it's not always because they're evil or cruel. Sometimes it's because you haven't set the standard. It's because knowingly or unknowingly, you allowed it. And while that might sting to hear, it's also the most empowering truth. Because if you allowed it, you can also stop it. You can change it. You can take back your power. See, here's what most people get wrong. They think self-respect is something you either have or don't. But that's not true. Self-respect is practiced. It's a daily decision to choose yourself. Not in arrogance, but in alignment with your worth. If you want others to respect you, the first thing you need to do is respect yourself. So clearly, so loudly, and so consistently that it becomes impossible to ignore. That begins by standing in your truth. And I don't mean the version of yourself you show to get approval. I'm talking about the real you, the one who knows what you need, what you value, what you can and cannot tolerate. When you stand in that truth, you stop bending to make others comfortable. You stop abandoning yourself to keep the peace. You stop explaining your boundaries like they're up for negotiation. Let's be real. Most people will treat you based on what you accept. They test you consciously or not. That one person who talks over you, they do it because you let them. The partner who mocks your dreams, they do it because you never pushed back. The colleague who takes credit for your work, they do it because you stayed silent. And silence, over time, becomes permission. Now, this isn't about being combative or hostile. It's not about raising your voice or throwing people out of your life at the first sign of disrespect. It's about raising your standards. It's about letting your energy, your decisions, your boundaries, and your tone speak for you, clearly, calmly, but with conviction. It's in the way you say no without apology. It's in the way you don't over-explain your choices. It's in the way you carry yourself tall, grounded, focused, even in the face of criticism. Because let me tell you something, when you know your worth, you don't argue with people who try to lower it. You don't waste breath trying to convince someone to see you differently. You let your life, your confidence, your discipline, your growth do the talking. Standing in your truth means you stop shrinking to fit into spaces that never respected you in the first place. You stop hoping that one day they'll wake up and realize how valuable you are. No, that realization isn't your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to walk in a way that reflects who you already are, even if no one else claps, even if no one else gets it. Think about it. You walk into a room, and the moment you speak, people either lean in or they don't. Some will overlook you, others will underestimate you. That's not your problem. Your problem is if you start believing that you deserve it, that being overlooked or disrespected is just your reality. That's the lie. That's where you lose your power. Because the moment you believe it, you start adjusting yourself to fit inside a box someone else built for you. And let me ask you, who benefits when you doubt yourself? Who benefits when you go quiet? When you laugh off the insult? When you downplay your success to keep someone else comfortable? It's not you. Standing in your truth is choosing discomfort over disrespect. It's knowing that not everyone will like you, support you, or even respect you, but you refuse to water yourself down just to gain their favor. You know why? Because what you tolerate becomes your standard. And that standard, that invisible line you draw, it teaches people everything they need to know about how to treat you. And here's the most powerful part. The moment you start honoring that standard, the wrong people will fall away. That's not loss. That's clarity. That's alignment. That's life-clearing space for people who see you and respect you without condition. So don't wait for someone to wake up and give you the respect you deserve. Set the tone from the way you show up, from the way you speak up, from the way you protect your peace, even when it's uncomfortable. You're not responsible for other people's behavior, but you are responsible for what you accept. And once you realize that, everything changes. Stand in your truth and don't flinch. Even when it's lonely, even when it's hard. Because the moment you do, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time, peace. The kind that comes not from approval, but from knowing you finally chose you. Most people misunderstand boundaries. They think boundaries are harsh. They think setting a boundary means pushing people away, creating distance, or being selfish. But in reality, boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping yourself intact. Boundaries are not walls. Walls block everything, even the good. Boundaries are armor. They protect you while still allowing you to show up in the world, to give, to connect, to love, but from a place of strength, not sacrifice. When someone disrespects you, it's not always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. They keep crossing lines. They keep taking and taking. They keep showing you who they are. But because you haven't put up a clear boundary, they think it's okay. And if you're not careful, you start reshaping yourself to avoid the conflict that comes from drawing the line. You swallow your discomfort. You laugh off your own pain. You let it slide again until one day you wake up exhausted, bitter, and disconnected from yourself. Let me tell you something that might shift everything. Every time you betray yourself to make someone else comfortable, you teach yourself that your needs don't matter. And that teaching becomes your pattern. It's time to break that. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're mean. It doesn't mean you're dramatic or too much. It means you respect yourself enough to protect your peace, your time, your energy. It means you've decided that your well-being is more important than someone else's opinion of you. Because here's the truth, people who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always be the ones who call you selfish the moment you create them. Let that sink in. They liked it better when you were available at their convenience, when you absorbed their emotional chaos, when you didn't speak up, when you made everything easy for them, even if it cost you your mental clarity. So the moment you stop allowing that, of course they'll react. Of course they'll resist. But their reaction is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to honor yourself. Every time you have to decide, are you going to spend your life being liked or are you going to be respected? People respect boundaries, even the ones who push against them. They may not like them, they may test them, but deep down they know this is someone who values themselves. And that kind of energy is powerful. That kind of energy shifts rooms. But let's be honest, setting boundaries isn't easy, especially if you've never done it before, especially if you're used to keeping the peace or making sure everyone else is okay. But guess what? You can't pour from an empty cup, and you can't heal in spaces that keep wounding you. So how do you start? First, get clear on what you actually need. What drains you? What leaves you feeling small, invisible, used? What patterns keep repeating that make you question your own worth? Get honest, because you cannot set a boundary around something you won't admit is hurting you. Then communicate it calmly, clearly, without apology. You don't need to over-explain. You don't need to defend your decision. You don't need them to agree with it. You just need to say, this doesn't work for me anymore. I'm not available for this kind of behavior. If this continues, I'll have to step back. That's it. Direct, respectful, and firm. And here's the part that matters most. Hold the line. Because the moment you set a boundary, people will test it. Not because they're evil, but because they're used to the old version of you. The one who always said yes. The one who avoided confrontation. the one who stayed quiet. And now that you're changing the rules, they're uncomfortable. That's okay. Let them be uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. What you allow continues. What you reinforce becomes your reality. So if you say, I don't tolerate being spoken to like that, and then laugh when they do it again, your boundary means nothing. You've got to be consistent. You've got to mean it. And that takes courage. You might lose people. That's the truth. Nobody likes to talk about. You might lose friends. You might upset family. You might shake the dynamic at work. But what you'll gain, peace, clarity, confidence, is worth so much more. Because once you start honoring your boundaries, you stop accepting crumbs. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop bending to fit into spaces that were never built to support your growth. You start moving differently. You start surrounding yourself with people who see you fully, clearly, and respect the lines you draw. That's the shift. Boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges back to yourself. They allow you to show up in your relationships from a place of truth, not performance. They make sure your yes means yes and your no means no. They protect your time so you can invest it in what actually matters. They guard your energy so you can show up for the things that feed your soul. And when you wear that armor, not to shut the world out, but to stay whole within it, you become untouchable, not cold, not hard, just clear, just grounded, just powerful. So, no, you're not wrong for needing space. You're not selfish for protecting your peace. You're not too much for expecting to be treated with decency. You're finally choosing you. And that's a boundary. No one can cross unless you let them. When someone disrespects you, the first instinct is often emotional. You feel it in your gut: anger, sadness, frustration, maybe even humiliation. It's natural. You're human. And when someone crosses a line, your mind wants to defend, react, or strike back. You want to prove your worth. You want them to get it. You want them to feel what you feel. But here's the problem. When you respond on their level, you step into their arena, and that's their home turf. That's where they win. Because some people don't want resolution. They want reaction. They want to pull you into a cycle of chaos, control, or manipulation. And when you engage emotionally, when you let your peace be disturbed by their words or actions, you hand them power. You lose control of the one thing that matters most. So what do you do instead? You master emotional detachment. Now let's be clear. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you become numb or indifferent to what people do or say. It means you stop letting their behavior determine your response. It means you learn how to observe instead of absorb. You see the game, but you refuse to play it. You rise above it, calmly, confidently, without a word wasted on defending what doesn't need defense. Because here's the truth. Not everyone deserves access to your emotions. Not everyone has earned the right to pull you out of character. And once you realize that, your world changes. Let's say someone insults you. Maybe it's subtle, a backhanded compliment, a sarcastic remark, a judgment masked as just being honest. Your instinct might be to clap back, to confront, to expose their intention. But pause. Ask yourself, what do I gain from reacting? What do they gain if I do? 9 times out of 10, they win when you lose your cool. When you become reactive, they get attention, they get control, they get what they wanted, your energy, and not just your energy in that moment. They live rent-free in your head afterward. You replay the words, you think of better responses, you carry that emotional weight into the rest of your day, your week, your relationships. That's a high price for a low-value exchange. Emotional detachment is the opposite of that. It's the ability to recognize what's happening in real time and say, this has nothing to do with me, and I'm not giving it my power. It's knowing that the person in front of you is projecting, deflecting, or trying to provoke. And instead of reacting, you choose silence, distance, or a grounded response. You stay anchored. But make no mistake, this takes practice. Because when you've been conditioned to defend yourself, especially in toxic environments, detachment can feel like weakness, like giving up, like letting someone win. But the reality is, you win when you protect your peace. You win when you stop justifying your existence to people who never valued it to begin with. Think about it. Have you ever had a conversation where someone was trying to bait you? Every word they said was designed to poke, to prod, to get a rise out of you. And maybe you bit, you argued, you tried to explain, you tried to make them see your side. And afterward, you felt drained, confused, even angrier than before. That's what happens when you play their game. Now imagine the same scenario, but this time you don't engage. You hear them, you understand what they're trying to do. And instead of reacting, you choose stillness. You choose to keep your voice calm. You don't justify. You don't argue. You give them nothing. What happens next? They lose their grip because your silence, your calmness, your refusal to react, it exposes them. It shines a light on their behavior without you having to say a word. It's uncomfortable for them because they're no longer in control of the dynamic. You are. That's power. And here's another truth. The more emotionally detached you become, the more clearly you see people. You start to realize who's trying to lift you and who's trying to control you. You start to see patterns, how some people thrive off conflict, how others manipulate with guilt, how some wrap their disrespect in humor, and because you're not reacting emotionally, you can choose how to respond, if at all. You don't need to match anyone's chaos. You don't need to stoop to their level. You don't need to prove your worth to someone who's already decided not to see it. Emotional detachment allows you to hold your peace not because you're weak, but because you're wise. You know your value, you know your truth, and when you operate from that place, you stop chasing validation. You stop arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop feeling responsible for fixing dynamics that you didn't break. So next time someone tries to pull you into their storm, don't step into it. Be the calm, be the clarity, be the boundary they never saw coming. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to walk away. And sometimes the deepest strength you'll ever show is choosing your peace over their noise. That's how you win. That's how you reclaim your power. That's how you handle people who don't respect you. By mastering the art of not needing their respect to respect yourself. There comes a moment in every person's life when they get tired of trying, tired of proving, tired of being disappointed by people who simply refuse to see them for who they truly are. And in that moment, something powerful happens. You stop asking the world to give you what it never had, the capacity to offer. You stop needing their respect, and you start demanding your own. This is where the shift begins. For so long, many of us have tied our value to how others treat us. If they acknowledge us, we feel seen. If they praise us, we feel worthy. If they dismiss us, suddenly our confidence wavers. It's like we're on this emotional roller coaster that rises and falls based on someone else's approval. And it's exhausting. It's unstable. It's dangerous. Why? Because when your self-worth is dependent on other people, you'll always be negotiating your value. You'll always be performing, shape-shifting, people-pleasing, hoping that maybe this time they'll finally give you the respect you've earned. But here's the hard truth. Some people will never respect you, no matter what you do, not because of you, but because of them. Because of their insecurities, their control issues, their jealousy, their small-mindedness. And the longer you chase their validation, the more you diminish your own. That's why the real work begins when you stop seeking external respect and start giving it to yourself without conditions. You look in the mirror and say, I'm not waiting for someone to treat me with value. I'm going to carry myself like I already have it. And then you move through life with that energy, not arrogance, not ego, but grounded assurance. You become so rooted in your own worth that nothing anyone does or says can shake you. This shift is subtle, but it's life-changing. Let's take an example. Imagine you're in a workplace where your ideas are constantly overlooked. You've spoken up, you've put in the effort, you've tried to earn your seat at the table, but they keep bypassing you. You might start shrinking. Maybe you stop contributing. Maybe you second-guess your skills. Maybe you even internalize the message. Maybe I'm not good enough. But when you make the shift, when you stop needing their respect, You realize my value doesn't decrease just because they refuse to see it. So you stop trying to be seen and start acting like someone who deserves to be. You keep showing up strong. You create, you contribute, you elevate, not for them, for you, because you have standards now. And one of them is that you don't dim your light just because someone else is blind. Respect is not something you beg for. It's something you radiate. And the moment you start radiating it, the right people, the ones who are emotionally healthy, who are secure in themselves, they'll notice, they'll respond. And the ones who don't, they'll fall away or they'll get uncomfortable. Either way, you're no longer adjusting yourself to fit into spaces that don't honor who you are. This is how you reclaim your life. You stop obsessing over how they see you, and you start focusing on how you see you. You stop measuring your worth based on your relationships, your job, or how popular you are. You start measuring it based on how much integrity you walk with, how deeply you honor your voice, how unapologetically you show up in your own truth. And here's another key. When you respect yourself, you start making different decisions. You stop tolerating people who treat you like a backup option. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop saying yes out of guilt. You stop pouring into people who only take. Instead, you start choosing peace over chaos. You choose growth over familiarity. You choose environments that nourish you instead of draining you. You become selective, not because you're better than anyone, but because you're finally honoring yourself enough to protect your energy. This doesn't mean you become closed off or guarded. It means you become aligned. You know what you bring to the table, and you refuse to beg someone to sit with you. If they can't match your energy, your vision, your values, you keep moving, not out of spite, but out of wisdom. There's freedom in this. There's peace in no longer living for someone else's applause, because applause fades. Opinions shift, people leave, but your self-respect, that stays with you, that sustains you when everything else falls away. So ask yourself, am I living to be liked, or am I living in truth? Am I waiting for someone to validate me, or have I decided to validate myself? Every time you choose to believe in your worth, even when it's quiet, even when it's lonely, you build unshakable confidence. And that kind of confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't beg, it simply is. It shows up in how you walk, how you speak, how you respond, how you refuse to settle. That's the power of shifting the focus. That's what happens when you stop needing their respect and start demanding your own. Not with your words, with your life, with your presence, with your standards, with your choices. And once you do that, something beautiful happens. You stop chasing respect, and it starts finding you. Walking away doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you've failed. It doesn't mean you're bitter or cold. Sometimes walking away is the most courageous, most loving thing you can do for yourself. Especially when you've given people chance after chance to respect you, to value you, to meet you halfway, and all they keep doing is showing you who they are again and again. There's power in staying. There's also power in leaving. And knowing the difference, that's wisdom. We are taught to fight for relationships, to be loyal, to hang in there. And yes, relationships, whether they're personal or professional, require work. But what they should never require is your dignity. If you have to keep lowering yourself to be accepted, if you have to constantly explain why you deserve basic respect, if you keep being dismissed, manipulated, or mistreated, then it's not a connection, it's a transaction. And often you're the one doing all the giving. So the question becomes, how much more of yourself are you willing to give away just to stay in a place where you're not seen? Walking away with grace means you've outgrown the need to prove your worth. You no longer argue. You no longer beg. You no longer try to fix what doesn't want to be fixed. You simply recognize that your peace is more valuable than their presence. It's not about being heartless. It's about being heart-wise. You've learned the hard way that some people will only respect your boundaries when you enforce them with distance. You've learned that no amount of loyalty will ever change someone who benefits from disrespecting you. And that realization, it hurts because you wanted it to work. You believed the best in them. You saw their potential. But you finally accepted potential means nothing if they refuse to grow. Here's the thing. Walking away doesn't require a dramatic exit. You don't have to slam doors. You don't need to broadcast your decision or make a big speech. You don't have to turn it into a scene. Sometimes the most powerful move you'll ever make is the quiet one. Just choosing not to show up anymore in places where you feel invisible. Choosing not to respond. Choosing silence over explanation. Choosing distance over dysfunction. And yes, at first it might feel uncomfortable. You might feel guilty. That's normal, especially if you've been conditioned to put everyone else's needs ahead of your own. Especially if you've been trained to believe that endurance equals love or that quitting means failure. But you must understand, guilt is not always a signal that you're doing something wrong. Sometimes it's just a byproduct of healing. It's what shows up when you start choosing yourself in ways you never have before. Letting go doesn't mean you're heartless. It means you finally have a heart for yourself. And don't confuse grace with passivity. Grace is strength wrapped in peace. It's having the courage to say, I love you, but I love me too. It's being able to step away from what's familiar because you know you deserve better. It's making peace with the fact that not everyone is meant to walk your whole journey with you. People will talk. They'll say you changed. They'll say you gave up. They might even try to paint you as the villain in their version of the story. Let them, because you don't owe anyone your suffering for the sake of their comfort. And you definitely don't owe them your silence when what's needed is your exit. You see, staying in situations that diminish you doesn't make you loyal. It makes you unavailable to the opportunities, the love, the peace, and the respect that's trying to find you elsewhere. When you walk away with grace, you're not just leaving them, you're walking back to yourself. You're saying, I matter. My voice matters. My energy is valuable. My time is sacred. And I will not spend one more second explaining that to someone who refuses to see it. And yes, people might try to come back. They might notice your absence more than they ever appreciated your presence. But you don't have to reopen the door. Growth means not revisiting places where you lost yourself. Growth means not having to touch the fire twice to remember how much it burned. Walking away isn't about anger or revenge. It's about alignment. It's about deciding that peace is no longer negotiable, that your healing is a priority, that you're done being emotionally available to people who are emotionally careless. You don't have to hate them. You just have to let them go. And as you do, let the guilt fade too. You're not a bad person for choosing peace. You're not cold for requiring respect. You're not selfish for protecting your energy. You're finally honoring the truth that was always inside of you. You deserve better. So when it's time, when your soul is tired of trying, when your heart whispers that it's done shrinking for love, for approval, for belonging, listen. Then get up, straighten your back, and walk away. Quietly, powerfully, gracefully, and don't look back. At some point, you have to decide that your peace is non-negotiable. And that your value doesn't decrease just because someone refuses to recognize it. That you no longer have the energy to fight for a place in people's lives where you're not genuinely respected. Handling people who don't respect you isn't about revenge. It's not about shouting louder, clapping back, or becoming like them. It's about power, the kind of power that comes from knowing who you are, honoring your boundaries, protecting your energy, and walking away when necessary. You don't owe anyone your silence, your suffering, or your explanation. What you owe is to yourself, your healing, your growth, your dignity. So set the standard. Guard your peace. Don't let disrespect rent space in your life. Stand in your truth, enforce your boundaries like armor. Detach from the drama, honor your worth, and when the time comes, walk away without guilt and without noise. Because your energy is a currency. And from this moment on, you spend it wisely.